Karen Salmanaka. Why reaching your goals doesn't matter. The hottest girl of the junior high of our freshman year, hero Karen, had the perfect cleavage face and easy to get along with attitude as they clowned on Uzikeke in the 8th grade. As soon as he had the transformation and was located in his new high school, Karen was outraged for her and Elle not being able to receive their prize from junior high. After talking all that shit, by the time Karen could date on the regular, Moody already became a rapper, meaning there is no reason to achieve your goal.
Mix between the two. Self-compassion is very important because it doesn't depend on performance or how you match up in comparison with other people. So in a sense, self-compassion has all the pros of self-esteem without the downfalls of what happens when you can't match up, or what happens when someone is better than you at something. But I think self-love is also important because we are living in our bodies. We are the only people that will ever be in such close proximity to ourselves at all times. And I think it's really important to not only be kind to, but also love the person that you are. So let's just go into it. One major epiphany that I've had recently is that I have the control to decide how I speak to myself. So an exercise for you to try is spend a day consciously listening to the things that you tell yourself, both in your inner monologue and out loud. If it is, to your partner, saying like, oh, I'm so terrible at this, I'm so stupid, I made a mistake, I'm so fat, whatever it may be. And it might be harder to verbalize your inner monologue if it isn't in words. Like me, I realized that I don't think in words. And maybe it's related to like all the different languages that I speak, but it's just a little bit harder for me to translate thoughts into words. So that's an additional step of translating the abstract into the verbal, if that's something that you struggle with, but hopefully it's not an issue that you have. So I really suggest that you write down all these things that you tell yourself on a day-to-day basis, and write down the time when you see your reflection in the mirror and you call yourself ugly, when the inner critic tells you everybody hates you. Write down what the inner critic says when you have an awkward moment during small talk. And at the end of the day or the week, look over that list with fresh eyes, as if it's something you are saying to someone else. What would people think of you if that's how you spoke to them? Would anyone want to be around you, or would they think that you're a horrible, awful, abusive person? So why are you letting this horrible, awful, abusive person live rent-free in your own head and speak to you this way every second of the day? This is not you. You may have been speaking to yourself in this way for such a long time that you think it's you, but it's not. It's just a tyrant that's taken over things and been running things for so long that you can't remember what it was like before that. You have a healthy self inside you as well, one who's capable of speaking back to this tyrant and speaking to you kindly instead. So that's the second exercise. Spend a day talking back to your inner critic with this healthy voice. Every time you hear yourself saying something negative or abusive to yourself, write down an actual dialogue with this inner critic. This is very similar to a video I had a few months ago called Talking Back to Your Demons. It was a good video, I was generally proud of everything that I said in it, but I realized upon doing further research that I was falling into a major pitfall of what people tend to do when they discover this concept, which is to demonize it. And unfortunately, this is not a separate entity from us that we can just demonize and relinquish all responsibility. Yes, this is kind of like a different person, but it is within us. So it is within our responsibility to expunge this person out of our minds. So in case you were wondering, that's why I took down that video. Hopefully this will give you a better sense of how to talk back to your inner critic without demonizing it, which is why I'm now calling it an inner critic and not a demon. And it's important to remember not to judge yourself for speaking to yourself self-critically. Understand that it serves an adaptive function, because the reason we tend to be so harsh on ourselves is we want to get ahead of other people's criticism, and we want to belong to a social group, and we think if we can just completely submit ourselves, maybe we can get some scraps of food. So really start practicing talking back to that inner critic in a way that is empowered and taking away some of the power in what the inner critic says and acknowledging that it's being deceptive and abusive to you. So an example of a dialogue could be, "You were so embarrassing in that meeting." "Oh, what makes you say that?" "You interrupted Becca while she was talking and everyone probably thinks you lack social skills now." "Oh yeah, I do remember that. My Zoom was kind of lagging and I think I accidentally cut off Becca." I'm pretty sure everyone knew that it was just my Wi-Fi acting up. Well, what if they didn't? Then they might think that I interrupted her. It's no big deal, it's not the end of the world. It's only human to sometimes interrupt people. Just last week I saw Brian doing the exact same thing. Yeah, but people like Brian, they don't like you. I mean, the evidence suggests that that's not actually true. I have gotten great feedback from my peers, and even if it were true that they didn't like me, that's their right, and I have no control over their thoughts and feelings. You got anything else to say? Well, that's just an exercise of how you can get to talk back to your inner critic. Another exercise is spend a day speaking to yourself kindly and lovingly instead. So spend a day assuming that everyone you come across likes you, thinks you're great, giving everyone the benefit of the doubt when they do something rude to you, saying nice things to yourself in the mirror, being gentle with yourself, forgiving yourself when you make mistakes, etc. Now you might be thinking, but what if it's not true? What if people don't like me? With all due respect, who cares? So what if it is true? Check out my video on why you shouldn't care if people dislike you. It's up here. This is something that my therapist and I have actually been working on recently, is living by the motto, so what? So this is kind of another exercise embedded within the previous exercise, is consistently asking yourself when something bothers you or you hear that inner critic, so what? Just two little words and they hold so much power. Someone thinks your outfit is ugly, so what? Someone thinks you're too outspoken, so what? Someone thinks you're too quiet, so what? Someone doesn't like you, so what? You gained weight, so what? How does that affect your life? You need to be okay with yourself in order to live a happy life. So if you need to skew the facts a little to do that, so be it. Assume that everyone thinks the best of you, because it doesn't need to be true to benefit you. Your inner critic is the only person that's able to penetrate the fortress of your mind. Your inner critic just takes the criticism and hate that other people hurl at you and takes it inside your mind and parrots it to you. But if you challenge your inner critic and replace it with a healthy, loving voice, then there's no one inside that fortress that can hurt you. It doesn't matter if Jess says you're dramatic and John says you're chubby, because there is this impenetrable wall between their opinions and yours. Your healthy voice is there saying, nope, I don't think so, sounds like a you problem. And we need to remember that self-love is not narcissism or arrogance. Self-love is actually the opposite of narcissism. I was talking to a friend of mine recently about this, because this is one of the things I had mentioned that I learned in the past 25 years of being on this earth. And she was saying, like, that's something I really struggle with as well, is assuming that if I'm confident, it will come off as arrogance. If someone says you suck and you reply, so what? That's not narcissism or arrogance, because you're not hurting anyone in the process. They're actually the ones trying to hurt you, and you're just repelling that. Arrogance is trying to make someone feel stupid or inferior to you, thinking that you deserve more than others. But that's not what I'm advocating you do here. There's nothing arrogant about saying that you deserve love. You're not saying you deserve love more than others. In fact, if you have healthy self-love, you're probably also advocating for others to love themselves too. I've said this in the past video on self-compassion as well, but it goes hand in hand with actual compassion. The people who are the hardest on themselves are often very hard on other people as well. The people that are compassionate with themselves are usually compassionate with others too. Saying so what simply takes away a person's power to hurt you, because they don't know what else to hurl your way. They eventually realize they're just tiring themselves out and that you're impenetrable to their hatred. Another exercise you can do is make a list of all the things that you love about yourself, and try not to focus too much on appearance. I mean, you can have a section on appearance if that's what you want, but ideally you would get to a place of body neutrality. And every morning, review that list, add to it if you can think of anything else. Just spend a minute thinking about all the things that you genuinely or half-heartedly love about yourself. Check out my playlist on body image related issues if you want more tips on body neutrality up here. Another exercise, assess yourself objectively and accept yourself for it. So the previous exercise is focusing on what you love about yourself. The next exercise is about focusing on accepting yourself compassionately, even for your imperfections. There's something called the Lake Wobegon effect, which, if you've ever heard Prairie Home Companion on 90.1, there was this thing called the Lake Wobegon where they talk about how all the kids are above average or something like that. I think that's how the line goes. And obviously that doesn't make sense for everyone to be above average. There's usually a bell curve in terms of how good people are at different things. So the Lake Wobegon effect is this tendency to view ourselves as above average than other people in things that are culturally valued in our specific context. And this exercise is designed to make you see it's not that I'm above average in all these different things. I'm above average in some things, I'm average in others, and I'm below average in other things as well. So write down, what are 5 things that you're above average at, what are 5 things that you're average at, and what are you below average at. This is actually an exercise from this book, so don't want to take credit for it, but you should buy this book, link in description box. And now look at your list. That is okay. Everyone has stronger points and weaker points. No one is above average at everything, and you don't need to prove yourself or get defensive when someone triggers an insecurity that you know deep down you're below average about. You can be comfortable in the knowledge that, hey, you're right, I'm only human. So what? Another exercise is take each of the traits from your below average list, one at a time, and ask yourself, does this trait or behavior show up at all times? No. Are there situations or contexts where it doesn't show up? Is it with specific types of people or specific people more specifically? How often do you display this trait? Are there times when you don't display it? Does this trait really define you if those particular circumstances must be present in order for that trait to emerge? So you're kind of moving from a place of, let's say the trait you're below average on is shyness. You're a very shy person. So you're moving from a place where you're saying, I'm shy. I'm just a shy person. That's who I am. That's how I define myself. That's my identity. You're moving into a healthier, more dialectical approach of sometimes I feel shy when X, Y, and Z, when I'm in this particular context with these people, when I'm with authority figures, when I don't feel comfortable because I don't know someone well enough. You're acknowledging that you're not this way all the time. This trait doesn't define you. This thing that you are not good at does not define you as a person. And also ask yourself, what circumstances caused this trait? If they weren't things within your control, such as, early neglect from parents or being bullied in school, why judge yourself for this trait having emerged? It wasn't something that you chose. If you didn't choose to have this trait, why judge yourself for it? I really recommend you do this with all the things that you feel self-conscious about, because it's a great way of reframing, no, I'm not bad at this or hold this negative trait integral to my identity. I'm a multifaceted person who changes depending on the context and the people that I'm with, and that's okay. And it makes sense that in certain contexts, I'm going to behave in certain ways. There's probably an adaptive function to this behavior. Another exercise is soothing and comforting yourself physically in times of need. So give yourself the kindness that you would like from others. I had a bad day a few weeks ago and I did the following. I acknowledged my feelings. I used my exhaler that I had on a different video as a sponsor. It really helped actually. It helped immensely just to have it ready to go. I cuddled with my partner. We watched something that made me laugh. I worked out, I stretched, I journaled, and then we went on a date. If you give yourself comfort, not punishment, when you feel a painful emotion, you're much more likely to move past it than if you resist it. This time last year when I had a powerful emotion like the one I was just talking about, it took me 2 to 3 days to get over it. A whole weekend was just ruined because of how I felt. And this time it took me an hour to get over it, because in feeling overwhelmed, I was able to stop and say, okay, hold on, one thing at a time. I know all the things that I need to do that would make me feel better, and it feels really overwhelming right now. It feels impossible to start doing just one of them. It takes so much energy right now to even decide what I want to do. But not doing anything is not an option. I need to take care of myself. I'm going to start by breathing into this exhaler. I'm going to work out. I'm going to ask my partner for a hug or give myself a hug. And sure enough, once you actually start to do that and start to slow down and treat yourself with kindness, it works to get your distress down. And the last exercise that I want to encourage you all to do is again related to self-kindness. Dr. Nonz